So it is my welcome. So welcome to the Silver Science Virtue Sanctuary and our Aging Masterclass with the co-founder of the Aging Revolution, Leonie Sanderson. I'll hand over now to Leonie.
Thank you very much, Faith. I'm going to share my screen and let's see if I can get that happening. Here we go. And how is that for everybody? Excellent. So thank you so much for the lovely introduction. My name is Leonie Sanderson and I am the co-founder of the Ageing Revolution. A little bit about me. I was born in North Queensland and I've recently returned to live there, and I'm based in Airlie Beach in the Whitsundays. It's a beautiful place to live. My professional background is psychology and communications, and I've worked at universities, at not-for-profits, at for-profits, in government, and generally in the social system for my entire life. I founded the Ageing Revolution with my partner, Simon, to challenge ageism and to irreversibly change the perceptions about what it is to age by working in partnership with businesses, community organisations, researchers, community groups, to create that transformative change and to develop better services and products. As the Ageing Revolution, we started in 2015. We went on a road trip around Australia in 2016, and we've delivered forums and workshops on building age-friendly communities. We've written a toolkit around creating age-friendly communities in Queensland, worked on tech projects for older people, worked on issues around social isolation, and also taken virtual reality into aged care. So we've done a breadth of things. Our focus is always on the art of storytelling. So we really believe the power of collaboration is really important, and the stories of older Australians should be put at the heart of anything that we do around ageing. If you do go and check us out, our most recent projects are Carked It. So Carked It is a game about death and dying that I was just talking about with Faith and Jodie earlier. So please go and have a look at that one. And Pick Me, which is a photo gallery of everyday older Australians. So some images of everyday older Australians that we put together in response to the images that we often see in the media. So let me just see if I can get my screen to... Oh, it doesn't want to move. Let me just go back out. Here we go. Got it. I also would like to, before we get stuck into the session, take a moment to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we live, work and play. I'm coming to you this morning from Bindal and Woolgaroo Gubba country in Townsville. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional storytelling culture of First Nations people and the power of those stories to make change through connection, emotions, and actions. And, you know, over time, I've really come to believe that stories are really the only thing that do make change. They're the things that shift and change us. So we really would love to hear stories from you today, but I'll share some of mine as well. I thought what we could do, because of the size of us today, is perhaps we could, depending on what you feel comfortable with, if you feel comfortable sharing as a group verbally, going around the group and telling us a little bit about who you are. And I think I've like skipped a slide here. Here we go. Oh my goodness, that's so sorry. My slides are all over the place. Here we go. If you could tell us your name, a little bit about where you are. So if you know the lands that you're on or just your location. And I'm going to ask you if you feel comfortable to share your age. So I'll do it too. I'm Leonie. I'm on the lands of the Bindal and Woolgaroo Gubba people in Townsville, and I'm 57. How do we want to do it? Do we want to try and do it like, let's do it as a chat, because I think that might be nice for us to do. So if you feel comfortable going into the chat, or if you feel comfortable coming off mute and telling us who you are and who's in the group today, that would be wonderful. Maybe Jodie or Faith, would one of you like to go?
Yeah, I was just writing mine in the chat. So my name is Faith. I am on Gadigal country, and I'm 58, nearly 59, and really looking forward to 60 next year.
Oh, 60 is my milestone as well. I'm looking forward to it too. Lovely. I see Leanne on Ghanaland and 53. Susan, Awabuckleland, is that how I say it? 57.
That's Awabuckle.
Awabuckle,
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Jody?
We've got a few 52, 57.
Anna? Gaddickland? The edge of 59. Birthday coming up?
Yeah, in May.
Lovely. And Belinda? Oh, I'm going to have to ask you to say it for me. Is that's in the Cairns Northern Beaches? Gonna give it a go. Yirganiji lands. And 61. Oh, no worries.
We're getting some echo feedback, Leonie, from yours. Just double check.
Yeah, I'm getting it as well. Thank you so much for sharing. Oh, yeah, I am getting that feedback as well. Now, it wasn't doing it before, Faith. Oh, we've stopped. Thank you. So thank you so much for sharing. I think, you know, sometimes sharing our age can be a real act of resistance and a real act of rebellion. Oh, now I've got some red lines on my screen now too. I don't know what they are. Can you see that?
I can see that. I'm not sure what's going on, but I'll just continue and I'll just keep trying to fix stuff on the back end.
Just keep going, right? Okay.
Mm.
So look, today's session, I really want to invite everybody to get curious and to interrogate your own biases. Why is ageism such an accepted ism? And what can we do to challenge it? Why is this important dimension of diversity often overlooked or left out? So just this morning, I had an email in my inbox about how we can challenge racism and sexism. And I thought, well, they should be saying it. How can we challenge racism, sexism, and ageism? And it often gets left out. Ageism impacts everybody, and it's harmful at every age and every stage. But we can work together to create change. Is it an easy thing to do? No, it's not. Creating change can be really hard and takes time, but it is possible. We can do it. We're all problem solvers, we're strategizers, we're creative thinkers, and I'm assuming this because we're all women. We can make change happen, and that's what I'm going to be looking at today. The Ageing Revolution was established to really challenge ageism and to, you know, like to really, I guess, put out to people that opportunities that aging brings, to embrace those opportunities. And look, it was basically born out of selfishness, because I've seen ageism. I've seen it with my grandmother and I've seen it with my mother. And I think it's time for it to be stamped out. Aging's a normal part of life and I want to make the best of it. But ageism stops us from doing that. And largely, ageism goes ignored, a little bit like older people. And I want to make some noise and challenge ageism and have some fun. And if we look at these statistics, we can see, you know, like our population is aging, 1 in 6 people who are over 65. But 83% of Australians think that ageism is a problem. That's from a study done by the Human Rights Commission, where we've got the Commissioner on Ageing. The World Health Organization acknowledges that ageism is prevalent, ubiquitous, and insidious. It's an ism that we just don't hear about. It's the one that goes unchallenged all of the time, but we can make change. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to take a little bit of a look about what ageism is. So we're going to have a bit of a look at the definitions of ageism, the effects of ageism on older women, how we can challenge ageism and what we can do to empower ourselves to do that. And of course, we'll have that Q&A. So if you do have questions, I'm really grateful that Faith and Jody are monitoring the chat there, because I acknowledge that 2 screens sometimes is challenging for me to kind of keep across everything. We'll stick to the timing as much as possible, and we'll aim to finish at that 10:50 mark and have some time for questions. But please feel free to pop them into the chat or save them for the end. So I'm going to apologise for the formatting on this screen. I can't change it. I've tried hard. But if you do have your phone with you and you've got your QR reader on your phone, you could scan that QR code and answer the question, what does ageing mean to you? Or you can go to menti.com and use that code 27337612. Or if neither of those things are working for you, you can simply go into the chat and give us 3 words about what ageing means to you. Is that working for people? Oh, yeah, here we go. Got some coming up. So, yep. Adventure. Oh, great. Wisdom, slowness, privilege, seeking joy, peacefulness. Oh, I love it. Any in the chat? Oh, yeah, freedom, opportunity, legacy. Yeah, great one. Burden, slowing down, external disappearance, impatience. Oh, that's a big one. So you can see what aging, it's so different for all of us, and there's like such a mix. This is really interesting for me. There's such a mix here of really adventure and wisdom and seeking joy. Oh, and what else have we got there? Relaxation, frustration, the other side of things, the slowness, the external disappearance. It's really mixed what aging means for us. Thank you. And I think every time I do this, I kind of see something new in there. I love that you've added in things like privilege and peacefulness, you know, really acknowledging that aging can be these things that we just don't think of. If we were to ask a younger person what aging means to them, I'm sure that the set of words would be very, very different. And I know from my own experience that it changes over time as well. Some interesting things about ageism. So the term was only coined in 1968 by Robert Butler, who was the founder of the National Institute on Aging. But ageism has been around a lot longer than that, and which I'm sure you would agree. Simone de Beauvoir, I don't know if anybody knows this, but Simone de Beauvoir wrote a book about aging. And if you ever, I picked it up in a secondhand bookshop, this book, and if you ever get the chance to take a look at it, it's fascinating because she brings a very philosophical approach and a philosophical perspective to aging. So she thought that having sex beyond the age of 35 was abhorrent until at the age of 39, she was propositioned by a younger man and she completely changed her mind. So, you know, we can have these ageist thoughts from a very young age. Our thoughts on aging really shift the older that we get. Culturally, most people would expect that Western cultures are more ageist than other cultures, but the research around the world shows that the difference is actually pretty minimal, that most cultures currently don't have a very positive view on aging, and that ageism is prevalent across cultures around the world. So World Health Organization has done a lot of work on this, And if you're interested in following up, I'll definitely have references for you that we can share and that you can go and have a look at. The other thing about ageism is that it's really just not good for our health. So the more ageist you are, the more likely you are to die sooner. In fact, by about 7.5 years. So ageism actually contributes to reduced life expectancy. It's not good for us to be ageist. So these are the things that I think that we forget a little bit about. We accept the ageism that's around us, but we forget that actually having a positive view on aging is good for our health. It's beneficial for us. So defining ageism. And I just want to take a moment here to acknowledge some of the images that I'm using in this presentation. So the Pick Me project was born out of wanting to create more images of everyday Australians who are aging. So when we first started the Aging Revolution in 2015, and I think things have changed quite a lot now by 2024, but in 2015, the images that we saw of aging in Australia were pretty much white, middle-class, heterosexual images. There was no diversity, not a lot of representation, and we wanted to do something about that. So we worked with a group of photographers to bring together a set of images in a gallery of older people in different situations, in different locations around Australia. And I'm using some of those images today in the presentation. For those of you in Sydney, you'll probably recognise this spot. And it would be amazing if you'd seen this couple. I think they just look so colour coordinated. I love their look. Defining ageing. So ageism is stereotyping, prejudice and discrimination of people based on their age. So the stereotypes are really about how we think, those things that we think about aging. Older people aren't tech savvy, older people are slow. The prejudice is how we feel. I'm too old to do that. The things that I do don't matter. Aging is ugly or undesirable. Discrimination is how we act. So a really good example of that is perhaps not employing somebody who's older because you think that they might retire, or maybe not giving the older person on your team those more difficult tasks because you think that they're not up to it. There are also different types of ageism, and we often hear about structural ageism, which is the ageism that sits in an organisation. So, you maybe definitely when we went on our road trip, we heard about from people about ageism from banks, not necessarily giving people loans because of their age. So that's structural ageism that sits within organisations and different structures that we engage with. Interpersonal ageism, and that was something that we really thought that we would encounter on our road trip when we talked to people about aging, and we did, but also internalised ageism. So that ageism that we hold against ourselves. When we went on that road trip in 2016, we weren't really prepared for that. We actually were really surprised to hear how many people hold ageism against themselves. So we heard from people, sometimes people only in their early 40s, who said, I think I might be too old to go back to university. I think I'm too old to enjoy certain sports now. I don't think I can wear clothing like that. I think I'm too old to take up new hobbies. So this internalized ageism that we hold against ourselves is actually one of the most damaging kinds of ageism, and something that we have to be kind of on our guard about all of the time. And when we add in intersectionality, which may be a term that you've come across or you've heard, or maybe it's not, but it really refers to, the layers of identity that we have and how that impacts also with ageism. So things like gender, race, our LGBTQI plus status, our marital status, our parental status, all of those things can add different impact to how we experience age, inclusion or exclusion. And I'm going to show you a short film, and hopefully this will work for us today, on ageism by the Every Age Counts campaign, which was the first campaign of its kind in the world, and really proudly came out of Australia. So let's take a look.
What
is ageism?
I've heard of it, but I don't really know what it is.
Ageism? Is that really a thing?
Ageism against older people is stereotyping, discrimination and mistreatment based solely on a person's age. It affects people in many ways and is so common and accepted, most of the time we don't even notice it. But maybe we would notice if it wasn't there. In an Australia without ageism, older people wouldn't automatically be less valued than younger people. With the same qualifications, it won't take them longer to find work, and they won't feel the need to hide their age from potential employers. We will get and not get jobs based on our abilities, rather than outdated stereotypes of what people our age can and can't do. Knowledge will be shared, younger to older, older to younger, for the benefit of everyone, including employers. And older workers won't be forced out because of their age. Without ageism, older people's voices will be heard and given the same respect as everyone else's. Getting older will feel like an achievement, not a failure to be hidden or fixed. Birthday cards with belittling ageist jokes will disappear. Derogatory terms for older people will be as unacceptable as derogatory terms for race and gender. Even well-meaning ones that unintentionally patronise. We'll realise only some older people live in nursing homes, only some are hard of hearing, and only some have dementia. Thinking all older people are the same will be as absurd as thinking all younger people are the same. Getting older will be a normal, natural part of life that happens to all of us if we're lucky. Being older can be 1/3 of our life and one of the best parts of it. Without ageism, we'll live in an Australia that respects everyone and everyone's future self. A place where we can all participate at every age. Older people who are pains in the bum will be treated the same way as younger people who are pains in the bum. No one's asking for special treatment, just equal treatment. Can Australia really get rid of ageism? Yes, we can. All these organisations have already committed to it. Visit everyagecounts.org.au to find out more and pledge your support. And let's make ageism in Australia a thing of the past.
Has anybody seen that video before? Have you come across it before? Oh, amazing. So Every Age Counts was started by the Benevolent Society. They started this campaign around ageism, and I think it's actually spun out into its own organisation now, Every Age Counts, and you can take a pledge against ageism. They also have some really good ageism resources. So if you are interested in becoming doing things like this, doing some training on ageism or helping other people or starting a consciousness raising group, they have some excellent resources and some excellent training there as well. But astonishingly, that was like the first national campaign on ageism anywhere in the world, and it was here in Australia. I thought it would be good after seeing that, if you could take a moment just to think a little bit about if you've ever been judged negatively because of your age, and how that made you feel. And if you could either share that in the chat, or if you feel comfortable speaking up, that would also be great. And then the second question is, have you ever judged someone negatively because of their age? And why do you think that that happened? I'll just give you a couple of minutes to share. If you have a think about it.
So Jalinda's got an interesting one about perception, maybe that one, especially in recruitment, she says.
Especially in much of it's perception and hard to prove. So, Jalinda, you were perceived negatively during a recruitment process, but yeah, it's difficult to validate, I guess. Sorry, Faith.
Okay, Jalinda's also said for the last 5 years, really shortlisted, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And, you know, I think I've like heard a lot of stories where people will be very hesitant to put their age on a CV or to tell their age during a recruitment process for that exact reason. You know, that ageism is real. Only my kids judge me as old so far. That's great. I was already retired as a model by 25, so aging became terrifying to me. Yeah, I think, you know, that lookism and the society that we live in that has that anti-aging view, it's really, it's hard to overcome. Highly qualified, sometimes told I'm overqualified or not a good look or not a good fit, or we're looking for fresh energy. Yeah. So I think you see these terms crop up a lot in job ads, in position descriptions. You know, we can tell when they're ageist when they say, you know, they want 5 years experience, or somebody who's like excited to take on new opportunities, or and I think that we see this language that it's actually pretty ageist. Pitching editors who are in their 20s who would be shocked if they knew my age. Yep. I have to catch myself with unconscious bias and judgment of seniors, for sure. In a previous workplace, I was told I was not welcome to contribute to a Facebook page because I was too old and the group was for a medical condition. Yeah, these things are just, they're really out there. And yet how often do we hear about ageism in the context of doing anything around diversity, equity, and inclusion? It doesn't come up as much as you would imagine. I think my story about judging someone negatively because of their age is actually about myself. So I realized not that long ago, beginning of this year, that I had been visiting Brisbane, where my son lives, and he's 19, and he wasn't there yet. He was in Brisbane, but he wasn't able to see me. He was away, and so I was there by myself, and I thought, oh, I really miss him. You know, like it's funny coming to a place where he's grown up and he's not here. And I messaged him and told him, and he said to me, well, Mum, you could just you could message my mates and they would really love to see you and go to the art gallery or go out. And I was like, oh, they wouldn't want to go out with me. And I realized that I was doing that thing of judging myself negatively because of my age, that I was assuming that his friends wouldn't want to, like, you know, hang out with me because why would they? You know, what would we have in common? And so I had to really challenge myself on that. So I messaged his friends and made a time to catch up with them the next time I was there, and they all accepted. They all came out to dinner with me, and I thought, you know, like we have this internalized ageism, these things that kind of impact us in ways that we would never imagine. And it was just a real wake-up call for me to know that, you know, even after like 20 years of working in this space, that I still have to catch myself around ageism and the things that happen to me. PC culture hasn't caught up yet. Yeah, I think, you know, the being politically correct, we can be politically correct around age and yet and have no impact at all. I mean, I don't know how many of you have heard jokes or banter around aging, and it's just completely acceptable. So I think that ageism is really that last ism that's the one that we have to really think about all the time. And that prejudice towards ourselves, you know, our future selves is what Ashton Applewhite says. And I always love that we're really, it's a great way to think about it, because it's not about the other, it's about ourselves, but just ourselves in the future. Does anyone else have anything else they would like to share before we move on to the next bit? So I think, you know, we could talk about this forever. Oh yeah, derogatory references to boomers. Okay, boomers. And you know, that I think ageism has that circularity to it, that it can be really divisive about older and younger people. Ageism affects younger people too. It affects all of us. But these, you know, derogatory references, the divisiveness, okay, boomer, the stuff that we hear about millennials, it's all ageism, and how we judge people based on their age. Thank you so much for sharing. So this won't come as a surprise to you, I'm sure, that aging is gendered. So ageism has really different impact on women than it does to men. And that's not to say that ageism doesn't impact men, it does. But I think that the impacts on women are much more significant in my experience. So those feelings of isolation, insecurity, psychological distress, what we've got on the screen here, the societal impact, exclusion, marginalisation, unfair treatment. I think homelessness amongst older women has been growing over time. Women tend to have less superannuation than men, significantly less superannuation than men. Divorce and relationship breakups can have a much bigger financial impact on women. And those stories of being invisible in the workplace, in society, I hear them again and again and again. And, you know, from women as young as 40. Now, when it comes to work, it's almost as if we can't get a break. You know, when we're in our 30s and 40s, we're seen as being too young to be in leadership roles. And then once we get to our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, we're seen as too old. We're invisible. We're overlooked. We don't receive promotional opportunities. So ageism can have a really negative effect on women. And I'm drawing attention to this because I think, you know, it's something that we need to keep raising up. It's not that it doesn't have an impact on men. And I know that you know, that we wouldn't want to say that ageism doesn't impact men, but I think it impacts women more. I don't know if that's been your experience or not, and please feel free to add into the chat about that. So this cartoon, this is Bobby. So I met Bobby in Darwin in 2016. And she was 82 at the time when I met her, and she was a masters swimmer. And I'm really pleased to report that Bobby is still going strong. She's no longer doing swimming competitions, but she's still swimming and keeping that exercise up. But at the time when we were doing this activation in Darwin, Bobby shared with us her take on being an older woman. And she said that when she goes into retail stores, retail outlets, that no one serves her, that, you know, she has to sort of like wave her arms around to get served, that she felt ignored and invisible. And, you know, and when we were talking, she said, you know, it's no wonder that older women could take up shoplifting. We could do that because it's like a superpower that we have of being invisible. And then suddenly people would run and help her. So we asked Simon Kneebone, a cartoonist that we've worked with quite a bit, to turn this into a cartoon. And it's been one of our most popular images, I think, over time. But I think it really highlights, you know, these stereotypes that we have of older women being timid or shy or meek, perhaps, and quiet. And yet, because we're ignored and we're invisible, and yet, you know, like this sense of humor that she had and that she showed, and this feistiness, I thought was just incredible. And if we think about the anti-aging society that we live in, it's, you know, it's no wonder that we have these ageist thoughts towards ourselves, because we're constantly being told that we're too wrinkled, or we're too droopy, or saggy, or that we're too hairy, or we're dried up, or we're too grey, and we're fed the story that life is somehow less if we're older, and especially if we're older women. So I wanted to introduce you to the U curve. So this curve is something that Ashton Applewhite, when she was researching her book, This Chair Rocks, discovered. And I say discovered because she just hadn't come across it before. It's been around for a really long time. But it's the U curve of happiness. And what this curve says is that in our younger life and in our older life are the times when we're most happy. That midlife is actually the time of least happiness. But as we get older, we get more happy. And it really takes off once we hit 65. So for all of us looking towards 60 and 65, the good times are yet to arrive. So some people say that the curve is like this because we have less debt when we're older. that money does buy happiness after all. And other people say that it's because we have more wisdom and experience, so we don't sweat the small stuff as much, which I'm much more inclined to believe. I think, you know, as we get older, we take on more life experience, more perspective, and we are more content with what we have, even if it comes, you know, with a couple of creaky joints, or 3 or 4 creaky joints in my case. You know, we become more happy. So as we grow older, we also grow happier. And this is just such a revelation to most people. And again, it's that challenging these ageist thoughts that we have in society and about ourselves. Okay. I'm just checking the chat. So what can we do to challenge ageism? And I guess, you know, I think it's the one only good thing about ageism, the one really great thing about it is that it's not permanent, that we can change it. We can challenge it. We can shift attitudes. They're not ingrained for life. They're things that we can change. So you might think that there's nothing you can do, that a single person can't contribute to change, but that's not true. So we can recognize ageism. We can see it around us and we can recognize it. So if somebody calls, you know, sweetie or dear or young lady, I can't tell you how many times since I turned 50 that I've been called young lady. It's like, and sometimes I don't even know who they're talking to. It takes me a minute to like realize they're talking to me. So things like that. We can see those media representations, and I'm sure everybody will be familiar with the representation of old age through a set of wrinkled hands. You know, it's something that we see in the media all the time, that older people are either frail and ill, or we're caring and doting, or we're, you know, a little bit out there. So we can see this, we can see it. And we can recognize it in the workplace. We can see those workplace dynamics where we're seen as not cool or we're too old for tech. And we can see it in healthcare. With our doctors. You know, I've certainly challenged my mum's doctor a few times about saying, it's you know, you're getting older, what do you expect? I said, well, I expect you not to be ageist. But it takes courage to respond. So we can recognize it, and that's one thing, and we can educate ourselves, but it does take courage to respond to ageism. And I think it requires a certain level of psychological safety with the people that we're responding to. But like calling out any kind of oppression, staying calm and having that neutral tone is really, really important. And research says that we really trust the opinions of friends and family. And so I think that that's a place where we can start, where it's safe, where we can have an impact on the people in our immediate circles. And I've put a couple of things here about, you know, I don't quite understand what you mean about, can you please explain? Is that really how you see older people? Research also says that just asking that question, I don't really understand, you know, can you explain what you mean? What do you mean by that? Is actually a really good place to start challenging people's views. Just asking that simple question. So people have to take a moment and think themselves, what did they just say? Because sometimes we say stuff without thinking. Our thoughts and actions don't match. So just asking that one question can make a real difference. Maybe we can do this in chat as well. But I thought if you could think about the ageist stereotypes that maybe you come across in your everyday life, and they might be around appearance, or they might be around behavior or the role that you have, and think about how they manifest and that impact on you. And if you could like have a think about what would be something that you could say to challenge or counter that attitude. So what would be a standard response that you could come up with to say to somebody, hey, I think that's ageist, I'm going to call that out? Because you might not want to say it like that, you know, everybody has their own way of challenging people or calling things out. What would be the thing that you could say? So we could start with the ageist stereotypes. What are some of those stereotypes that you can think of? I'll put a couple into the chat as well. . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . Yeah, that the word grey is awful, depressing and a bad thing, but it's just another colour, for example, with your hair. Yeah. Jalinda, I've certainly had, when I first let my hair go grey, and I did let it go grey in my 40s, one of my co-workers was really upset with me because she thought it made me look older. And she got really upset about it. And I had to sort of say, like, I don't think it makes me look older. And it just makes me look the age that I am. But she found it really difficult. So again, that internalized ageism. Oh, it depends at the comment.
I also,
Yeah, sorry, Faith, go.
no, you go.
No, I was just going to read out the comment.
Yeah. Yeah, I always push back on the idea that the word old is negative. You know, you often hear people saying, don't call me old, that's a bad thing. And I always push back on that because I do see the word as descriptive, you know, and I think it's about our own internalized ageism. So I'm always very acutely conscious of that word being, you know, associated with being negative.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm probably talking about Ashton Applewhite lots in this, but she's got some really great ideas. And, you know, she talks about using the word olders instead of old or elders, just as a way of shifting some of that feeling about the word old. But you know, I think we can reclaim it for ourselves as well. I was going to read out Jalinda's comment, which was I think it was, no, hang on, it was Sue. I've got to go a bit through Susan's comment about, you know, somebody who's been calling you young Sue for 20 years. And so, you know, if you like it, I think it's different, right? And so sometimes we can have this language that is, and I think it shows the importance of nuance, that sometimes the language, you know, isn't necessarily ageist, depending on the context that we have around it. If you like being called young Sue, then I think it's great. Or when people say, are you still working? Yeah, I've had that too. Are you retired? I was like, I'm 57. I'm not planning on retiring for a really long time. I might retire when I'm 67, but I might not retire at all. I don't know. I think one of the, I'm going to put mine in the chat as well. I think one of the stereotypes that I've come across is that the idea that just older people don't have sex, that they're sexless in some way, or that they don't have any sexuality. And I think that's a really important one to call out as well. And I asked an aging sexuality expert how to do that. And she said, just by being unapologetic about it. And I thought, yeah, okay, unapologetic, that's great. It's strange being told you don't look your age. Yeah, it is. How do people respond to that? How do you respond to being told, oh, you don't look your age? Or what's the other one? You look really good for your age. How do you respond to that? Does anyone want to share?
I often laugh, you know, because I push back on that, you know, and I laugh and I make them aware of what they're saying because they don't really actually understand. Most people assume that you're going to take it as a compliment, and they're quite shocked when you challenge them on that. And I tell you, just I know that's a compliment, but actually it's not a compliment to me because I really love my age and I love looking my age.
That
Yeah.
reminds me. Oh God, sorry.
No, go, Cleo.
Hi guys. Yeah, no, that reminds me of a story. I remember the actress Sally Field was in a movie called Steel Magnolias with a lot of, you know, women that were post 40, like Dolly Parton, Sally Field, all these great actors, Olympia Dukakis. And Sally Field was playing a mother for the first time of Julia Roberts. And they said, you're too young to play her mother. She said, this is what 55 looks like. I'm 55 and I look exactly my age because this is what it looks like now. You know, I think that just Faith's comment reminded me of that.
I think that's a great comment, you know, like it's a great response. This is what my age looks like. It's just what I look like.
This is it. Like you're looking at it.
Yeah, that's it. And I think it's some of that stuff about, you know, what we see in the media as well. We don't see We don't see people our age a lot of the time in the media. They're non-existent or very, you know, represented in a very minor way. I think there's so much about stereotypes, you know, and how they impact on us, and the different ways that we can respond. And I really would encourage you to like have a little bit of a think about that, and think about the things that people say to you and how you can respond. Because to recap on that, you know, recognizing ageism and helping others to recognize it too is really important. Acknowledging it and calling it out, but maintaining your own psychological safety, because that's really important. You know, you don't want to feel worse. You want to feel good about calling something out. And having that plan, you know, having those responses in your back pocket. So it sounds like, Faith, you know, you've had like a couple of those encounters, and you've got things that you can say that you can pull out straight away to say. And I think that's a really good thing to do. We can have that plan for ourselves to be able to challenge it, and to help others to recognize it as well. And ask that question, you know, what do you mean by that? What do you mean I look good for my age? What does that mean? Does that mean I, you know, like somebody else doesn't look? I don't know. Like aging is, you know, getting out of bed, and successful aging is getting out of bed every day and being able to like get on with life. That's great. If we can all do that, you know, we're all growing older. So sharing our stories is also really important. So congratulations, you know, today what you've done is you've taken a first step in becoming aging advocates. And I think that's just amazing, like humming along, finding out about ageism, learning a little bit about it, and then empowering yourself to tell your own story. So we can all be advocates and activists for age equality. There's nothing stopping any of us doing that. We can do that in our personal lives, in our personal connections, in our circles. We can take the pledge for every day, every age counts. We can take the quiz, Am I Ageist? There's quite a few of them out there now. You can go and have a look and see where your own biases might sit. We can celebrate older women and other older women. And I think in this community of Silver Sirens, you do a really wonderful job of that, of celebrating women. So I think there are lots of ways that we can do that and challenge ageism. Ashton Applewhite, Jeanette Liardi, Tracy Gendron, Sheila Callahan, Louise Aronson are all advocates online that you can check out, that they all do their own bit around challenging ageism. They're mostly based in the United States. If we want to look a little bit closer to home, we've got Natasha Ginnivan, Catherine Barrett, Yvonne Miller. Again, all are actually mostly they're academics in the field, but all challenging ageism in different ways. And Moira Allen is based in Paris, and she leads an organisation called PION, which is the Pass It On Network. Again, focused on ageing and challenging the idea that we're somehow less as we get older, that we still have a lot to contribute as older people. In the media, there's This Chair Rocks. Ageism Unmasked is a book that's just come out around age bias and how to end it. And then Age Against the Machine, written by Melissa Doyle, who some of you might know from television, is another book that's just come out around aging. I love Grace and Frankie. If you want to check out some really good pushback against older women and age, I think Grace and Frankie is a wonderful show and a great place to start. But what I thought that would be really great is that if everybody wanted to share, again, maybe we can work out how to do this, Faith, but share those resources that we come across and contribute to people having a bit more education and awareness around aging. That would be wonderful. We could start building that. I'm really happy to support that and use my link tree to do that. So I'm going to start adding some resources onto that, and I'll share that with Faith and Silver Sirens. But I encourage everybody to share as much as they can with each other to be able to continue this conversation. There's my link tree. You can check it out. I've only started it in the last couple of weeks, but I think it's a really good way to be able to like share resources. So I'm keen to add more in there around ageism. Question and answer time. Oh, hang on, I'll go back for you for the link tree. There you go.
That's okay. Can you just send me the links through email and I'll make
Absolutely.
sure that everyone gets it? Yeah.
Fantastic. Jane Caro too. Yeah, she's great. So does anybody have, I'll stop sharing because I think it's nicer for us to see each other's faces properly. Any questions or any thoughts that you want to share before we finish up today? And thank you, Faith, so much for the opportunity to talk a little bit. I know it's a very high level, quick scan on ageism, but hopefully you've got something out of that and the things that, some strategies that you can take into everyday life and learn more about it and how we can challenge it.
Okay, so who would like to jump in?
Oh,
Jalinda, your thing is now working. Great. Okay,
Yeah.
go Cleo. Go for it.
Yeah, no, one of the things that was a really great takeaway today was that sort of symbol of the U-shaped curve, because Faith and I, when Faith and I always try to boil down the message for the Silver Sirens events for the press releases, we always come back to that one that we have to make every year, which is, let's not just make it about surviving deficit. Let's actually make it about thriving and the good, because there is so much good and freedom. And so the U-shaped curve is a really nice, useful tool, that it's not just some crazy thing that Faith and I are talking about. That actually it isn't just about the gammy leg or the wrinkles. It's actually and reinventing them as badges of honor, but that there are freedoms and there are things that you can shrug off, and there are financial solidity for some women, or child free but you're not old yet, or now you can do what you want. There's a lot, and I think the U-shaped curve was something I didn't know about, so I'm grateful that we've got that metaphor. It was really great to hear that.
Oh, wonderful. I'm like, yeah, use it. I think it's a really great piece of intelligence, about growing older. And I think the thing that we forget about aging is that it's not just about older people. It's about everybody, because we're all aging. So we just tend to focus on aging as being a people over 45 or 55 or 65 issue, and it's not. It's all of us. So the U curve is wonderful because it just shows that we enjoy life more the older we get.
And it's also probably not a coincidence that the middle of the curve is the hard yakka years of just
Right.
clawing your way up the ladder. When you're a kid, you're carefree. When you're older, you reprioritize. So I'm sure it's not a coincidence that 30-40 obsession with all those things that consume us is part of the reason why people are too busy to be happy.
Absolutely.
Beautiful. Okay. Anyone else want to jump in while we've got Leanne here? Yeah, go Jalinda.
Hi, everyone. And I'm so sorry my camera was off for so long. I have had this problem all week with everything I've jumped onto, and I finally fixed it. So it's lovely to see everyone. I'm very focused on abolishing ageism, have been for the last couple of years, and researching that for my next book. But it came about from the fact that at 59, and probably the years leading up to that, I'm 62 in July. So at 59 and 6 months, I stopped everything I was doing and really started evaluating why it is, that I was sort of dreading my 60s instead of celebrating what my 60s could be. So I stopped bleach blonding my hair. It's the same style as I've always had, but it's now just my natural grey. And it's interesting, I did that as an experiment, writing more about that. And yes, some of those comments someone said before about, friends, close friends saying, what are you doing? Like as if it's like you're letting yourself go. All these comments you get just because you've gone from yellow blonde to silver grey. It's just a colour. I mean, it could be bright pink, it could be anything. It's just a colour. So we've got to look at that. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it. Listen, I just put in a thing before. I've got a lot of research and collaboration, actually, which has been wonderful, with Aviva Wittenberg-Cox, who's based in the UK. And she has a really great podcast called Four Quarters. And that's another concept or framework that's very much worth looking at. And it looks at the fact that the best time for women to plan and create life on their own terms is coming up to or just starting your Q3. So third quarter, which is the age 50 to 75. So I'll leave that with you, more on that at some other time. But thank you. This has been wonderful. And I've found my group.
Mhm.
That's brilliant.
I've been
Belinda,
looking for
please
my
share
group in
those.
Australia because there's a lot overseas
Right.
happening in this space, and I couldn't find. I was aware of what you said before, that one a while ago. What was it? The video you showed and stuff. I
Every
wasn't
age
aware of that.
counts.
It's been
Every
out.
age counts.
Yeah, but I didn't
Every
see you doing a lot of active stuff at the moment, so I was looking for who's doing active stuff in Australia because it really needs to happen, and a group like this can push that forward. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Delinda. We've just got time for one more comment or question. Who would like to jump in? Come on, VIP. You've been very quiet. You'd have to unmute yourself.
I've left a few comments on the chat line. I am kind of aware of biases I've grown up with. So in my bloody hell, the fourth quarter, if the third quarter is up to 75, I've just tipped over. So in my fourth quarter is to make up for it, and I do approach people at bus stops and say good day, just a simple hello, young and old. And it's often very surprising how the younger ones in their second quarter are often taken aback that someone's even said good day and addressed them. So I'm a kind of street activist in being nice.
Oh, I think that's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Anything to break down that invisibility, because if
Yes.
people are ignored and you're standing just almost within their social space because you're queuing for a bus or a train, you need to acknowledge others. Enough said.
Beautiful.
Maybe we can make a cartoon of that. I think that would be awesome.
That would be good, yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. So let's just go back to you then, Leonie. Do you want to just give us some final words and then we'll wrap up?
Yeah, look, I think, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk with you. I think this is it's such a big topic, and there's so much to talk about that we could unpack. And I really just hope that there's something that you've been able to take away from it today. And, please continue to keep sharing, keep recognizing it and keep calling it out, however that is for you, like whether it's breaking down that invisibility, or challenging somebody about your hair color, or simply, asking somebody what do they mean by that comment that they've made about how you look good for your age. I think we can all do that, and we can all make change. So thank you so much for coming along today and listening. Thank you, Faith.
Thank you so much, Leonie. Thank you so much. And I got a lot out of it. And I think the simple stuff that you said around the internalized, like starting off by watching our own internal dialogue and our own internalized ageism, I think that's a really great place to start, because we all have control over ourselves. So really appreciate your work, and we thank you for being here.
Thank you.